This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Yeah, yesterday we talked about Pearl Harbor Day, so you would have remembered that. That's what I began things with. We also talked about the period after the Persian Wars, the period of victory and the beginning of the Athenian Golden Age, where Athens and Sparta were each supreme in their realms. We talked about the Constitution of Athens, pioneered by Solon and then refined by Cleisthenes, which in the Golden Age had every Athenian citizen, that is, every freed-born man of Athens, take part personally in government. That's different from what we do on a fundamental level. We elect representatives to represent our views in the various branches of government. And we also separate and diffuse power in government because we don't want any one branch or any one person to have too much power. The Romans gave us that. Well, this is pre-Roman. The Athenians do everything through their General Assembly, including courts. Athenians work during the morning on their family issues, family businesses, should I say, and some afternoons the General Assembly meets, and any Athenian citizen can go and take part. So, maybe that day the agenda says we do a murder trial, or a tax policy debate, or we decide whether we're going to ally with a foreign country, or whether we're going to build a colony somewhere, or whether we're going to war. So the Athenian General Assembly is a place where every major decision is made, and every citizen can go and be a part of it. Not everyone goes every time, but some days lots of people, other days not so many. Whoever shows up can take part, not only by listening to the deliberations, but by participating in them, by queuing up to get a hold of the talking stick for a moment, the staff, while you hold the staff to say your piece. You're allowed to say one thing in the debate, and just one thing. So you better make it good and memorable. And then you pass the stick on, and after everyone has spoken, that is conclusion of debate. And then people go to different parts of the arena where they're meeting, the amphitheater, and that's how they vote. So the General Assembly makes all the decisions. And everyone who's a part of the city of Athens as a citizen can be a part of this. I assume that that's going to be resolved soon.
Yeah, I'm searching for my pencil.
Okay, good luck. I'm going to show you something, and everyone else too. I have 2 cups here filled with writing utensils that people have left. So what I'm going to do is find you a good pencil that you are welcome to use, and anyone can go over there and take those. Not trying to embarrass you, just trying to let everyone know what they need. Or don't use the pencil I brought you. That's fine too. It's not good enough for me. No, I'm joking. Use it or not as you like. But they're over there if you want to search for them. Just bring the one I gave you back if you don't want to use it. So, who decides what the agenda is for the General Assembly? Well, that's the job of the Council of 500. The Council of 500, well, if we were going to have a body that set the agenda for the most important group within our society, we'd vote. We would elect members of the Council of 500, either because they seem wise or they seem smart, or, I like the way he looks on TV. I don't like the way the other guy talks. He's too brash and orange, or whatever. Oh, God. In any event, we'd vote. And probably we'd vote for people who agree with our ideas and whose ideas align with ours. That's what we do. That's what the Romans did, not the Athenians. Everyone's citizen, who's a citizen's name, got put on a potsherd and put in a jar, and the jar was rolled around for a while until everything was mixed and matched. And then the first 500 names that came out of the jar, they're your council. You're going to have your share of nut jobs, morons, and wicked people. They said, fine, we'll have our share of nut jobs, morons, and wicked people. But there are 500 positions. The likelihood of us getting a majority of nut jobs, morons, or wicked people is pretty low. And even if we end up with a Council of 500 dominated by morons, whack jobs, and wicked people, they're only there for 6 months. They can't do that much damage. We hope. If you believe in democracy, you've got to believe in the possibility that in the most common of people, there are uncommon virtues that can come out. That's what democracy is all about. So we, Athenians, choose our leaders by lot, by lottery, randomly. Now, the job of the Council of 500 is to set the agenda for the General Assembly. They have a 6-month term, and they are chosen by lottery. But there is one type of job in the government structure of Athens that is not everyone or chosen by lottery from everyone. And that is general. Generals in the Athenian democracy are chosen by election. They are the only people in Athens that are elected. Now, we don't elect our generals. We elect our presidents, and our presidents are commander-in-chiefs of the military, and they, therefore, through the Department of Defense, departments of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and so forth, they choose who our general officers are. But the people of Athens choose their war leaders, and there are 10 of them. Strategoi, Greek generals. Why do they choose their generals where everyone else is everyone comes or random? What is it about generals and their job that is so different?
Because generals are largely in charge of commanding various armies. They would be elected by the people given how they experienced who would be best under pressure, who would choose the best people for the job, and who would command the most efficiently.
Right. People learn about leaders, and they make a decision about who they want to risk their life under. In fact, in American militia forces, we elected our officers too, in our first 100 years or so. In the Civil War, they elected who the colonel was going to be. Or the colonel who paid for everyone's weapons got to be, the guy who paid for everyone's weapons got to be colonel. It wasn't really until the 20th century that we formalized all this stuff. It has to do with war and what war is. If you're facing a natural disaster, even a disease, you can afford a degree of stupidity. Because the natural disaster or the disease is a constant. Nature doesn't have a mind that says, I want to flatten the city of New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina, form! Flood, 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 flood. No. Nature is not there as a mind. I am not an animist. I am not Shinto. I do not believe that every storm has a living soul and a personality that you can talk to. Maybe I'm wrong. A natural disaster can be figured out and dealt with without being incredibly mentally brilliant, because it's predictable. Once you know what's going on, it's logical. You can take steps that make sense. You can avoid doing stupid things that make things worse. And in general terms, things are going to improve if you are reasonably mediocrely competent. That's with a natural disaster. If there's a flood, move people to high ground and try to protect those things that are going to be destroyed with sandbags. If there's a fire, try to destroy some buildings in its path to create a fire break, and try to wet down the fire break and the buildings beyond it. You sacrifice the area that's currently burning, but you separate the rest of the city, and you pray for rain. A blizzard, try to keep warm. Disease, try not to pass the disease to other people. Does that mean we all have to wear masks and close down our businesses and lock down? Not necessarily. Not unless you think the masks actually work. Some of us do, some of us don't. But it's something that you understand. It's predictable. It's like a bull charging you. It's dangerous, but you know what to do. If you keep your head, you're going to be fine. Here comes Bully Bullenstein. You basically do what a toreador does. You distract him with the cape, and you get him to charge the cape, and then you step out of the way. You say, ole, and there goes the bull past you. It's exciting, but it's not deadly. But in war... In war, we are up against the most dangerous creature that we know of in the entire universe. We're up against human beings, and our enemies are not going to put the stupid people in charge of their armies. They're going to put their best and their brightest, their most clever and deceitful. They're going to put their top people. And their top people in war have one job: to kill you and your people and break your stuff so that they can take your land and take your stuff. If you live through it and they win, maybe you'll get to be a slave. That's war. War is the most unforgiving activity that human beings engage in, because we're not up against a predictable force of nature. We're not up against a big, strong animal that has instincts that are very easy to figure out. We're up against people who can distract you over here while stabbing you over here. We're up against people who can intimidate, who can trick, who can put you off balance, who can play head games with you. You also have to inspire and lead your people so that they still think it's reasonable to fight and die in this war against that enemy. You've got to do all this stuff. You've got to be at the top of your game. They could not put it to chance. They could not trust just anyone to be one of their strategoi. They had to make sure, for the sake of their freedom and all of their stuff, that they had the best people they could possibly have in charge in wartime. That's why they elected their generals. And it makes sense. There's one other aspect of Athenian democracy that's kind of interesting. You know, in every community, there are people who you just don't like. They're obnoxious. They're irritating. They get in the way. They frustrate your plans. Either because they just are contrary, or you just don't like them. Maybe it's pheromones. People emit pheromones, which are basic hormonal smells. And what colognes and perfumes are designed to do is they're designed to capitalize on these smells. That's, why colognes smell a certain way and not another way. Same with perfumes. But some people meet and they just don't like one another. They just don't. There's no chemistry. Other people meet and it's love at first sight. That's chemistry. Well, if every community has people in it that nobody likes, or that are just a problem. I'm looking for a book as I'm talking. If every community has that, and we're a free community, why don't we do something about it? So, what the Athenians do about it is they come up with a system known as ostracism. Excuse me, I gotta go back here because I'm looking for a book. Might be here. Nope. Maybe it's over there. Ostracism. Now, you probably know what ostracism basically means, but I'll tell you what it means in Athens. Once every year, the General Assembly would meet. And when they met, they would each take a potsherd, a little piece of broken pottery, and they would write a name on it. And they'd carefully put it inside a jar. They don't have to roll the jar around this time. After everyone has put their name in the jar, the name that they want to put, what they do is they count the votes. Whoever gets the most votes gets voted off the island, voted out of the city. They are ostracized. They are cast out. Every year, an Athenian citizen gets booted. It happened to Themistocles. Remember, no good deed goes unpunished. Themistocles saves Athens from the Persians, is basically the key figure in winning the Persian wars, and a few years later, the people of Athens vote him out of the city, saying that he's a Persian agent. If he had been a Persian agent, he would have lost the Battle of Salamis. But he didn't. He eventually became a Persian agent after the ostracism because he needed a job, and they were willing to hire him because they recognized his talent. If you're ostracized, You've got to immediately get your gear that's mobile and get out of town. Get out of the entire city-state ruled by Athens. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. If you have physical property, maybe your family will get it, maybe not. Maybe it will be confiscated by the state. Anyone who's in the fan blast is free to move to one of the open seats in the room, but I need air. I don't want you to be uncomfortable, so feel free to move. Think about that. You're an Athenian citizen, and suddenly you're no longer an Athenian citizen. You got to leave. You got to go somewhere and live as a foreigner in a foreign land, a stranger in a strange land. You're going to have to maybe learn different ways. You're going to have to be under different laws. People are constantly going to treat you with suspicion because maybe you're not really ostracized. Maybe you're a foreign agent. Maybe you're an Athenian spy. If anything goes wrong, if a child goes missing, if a cat goes missing, if a person ends up dead, the foreigner is the likely target of suspicion because he's a foreigner. You lose everything. You lose your freedom, you lose your wealth, you lose your identity. You've got to go out into the world and try to make your way in the world as a foreigner in someone else's town, in someone else's land. You come back to Athens, you're going to die. They will kill you for breaking the law of ostracism. You are not allowed back. So that's an interesting custom. I don't know what we would do with it if we had it, but that's an interesting custom. And frankly, as an obnoxious person, I am just as glad we don't have it. Because there's no question in my mind, sooner or later, I'd get voted out of the city. Because I am contrary and all those annoying, obnoxious things that we just talked about. I'm not joking. Hang on. They all have talents. So, let's take a look now at the high point of the Golden Age of Athens. Here we have the face of Pericles. There's a picture in your book. There's always a picture of Pericles in any book that has a section on Greek history. Pericles is an elected general. In fact, he's an elected general from 461 BC until his death in 427 BC. Which is a long time. Yeah. Pericles is a general for the rest of his life. Now, what's 27 from 61? 51, 41, 34. He is a general for 34 years. At the high point of Athens' power, this is a little ironic because the Golden Age of Athens is also known as the Age of Pericles. And the Age of Pericles, it's ironic because in a democracy, we're all supposed to be equal. Every citizen is supposed to have roughly equivalent power. Yeah, he's a general, but it's peacetime. Yeah, he'll have some power, but he'll get elected and he'll get unelected, right? No, he doesn't get unelected. He dies in office. Pericles becomes the most powerful man in Athens. The ultimate democracy has its golden age named after a guy, a one-man ruler named Pericles. Now, Pericles was not a dictator, he was not a tyrant, but he did rule Athens because he had a faction of people who voted with him in lockstep whenever he needed it. He got a critical mass of the other generals to be on his faction, on his side, and he got a mass of the Athenian people to join him. Now, this picture of Pericles, is this what he actually looked like? Well, the thing about sculpture is it's not a photograph. You don't just take a photograph of somebody in the midst of action. You don't. Everything in a sculpture is preordained. You may know about a place called Glamour Shots. Glamour Shots used to be in every mall. It's a photography studio. And what it's designed to do is make ugly people look beautiful. Fashion, lighting, various kinds of lenses and gels are all used. So if you're not really a looker, but you want to be glamorous, you go to Glamour Shots, and it'll make you look like a movie star. It's fun if you like that sort of thing. Glamour Shots, like all mall stores, probably are out of business now. But what Glamour Shots is going to do is they're going to find your best attributes and they're going to emphasize them. And they're going to find your worst attributes and they're going to de-emphasize them. This is a Glamour Shots version of Pericles. This is Pericles on his best day ever, with all of his handsomeness and none of his ugliness. For example, why do you think he's wearing that helmet? Word is the man had a birth defect. His skull was misshapen. And instead of having a statue with Pericles the misshapen skull guy, he chose to have a helmet on him to both represent the fact that he is a general and also to hide the fact that he's got a misshapen skull.
Definitely not because all the incest.
What was that?
I'd say definitely not because all the incest.
Yeah. No. Actually, he's not a royal person. He's probably, I hope, not the beneficiary of incest. Look, there are people today who have to be pulled out of their mom with prongs. Okay? I was pulled out head first. In the ancient world, if you have a doctor with a bad touch, infants' babies are still very malleable. They're still very plastic. So if you get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, you could end up with a misshapen skull just because the doctor you have botched the job.
That's why you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want that.
Which is fine, but it doesn't.
It doesn't look good. It doesn't. Good. I didn't know you knew about that. I didn't think about it much either. So, Pericles dominates Athens, which is kind of ironic because it's a democracy. What does Pericles do? Well, Pericles is a big supporter of the navy. So he wants the navy of Athens made to be the strongest force at sea in the known world. And he does. The Athenian navy becomes the terror of the seas. He also wants to expand Athens' power. So Pericles comes up with the notion, or sells the notion, of the Delian League. On the little island of Delos, in the midst of the Aegean Sea, he calls a council of all the Greek poli that have some trade with Athens and that are on the sea, either on the coast of the mainland or on an island. And the idea is, look, we are all vulnerable. None of us knows what's going to come over the horizon. It could be another Persian battle fleet. It could be barbarians. We don't know. And if you're alone, the world's a pretty cold place, a pretty scary place. Here you are alone on this island of Delos, or wherever you're from. But there's something that we can do to make us stronger and safer. We can come together in a great league of states, the League of Delos, the Delian League. And we can say an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. If anyone is stupid enough to attack Delos or any of the other allies that join the League, you know what? They're at war with Athens day one. And the Athenian fleet is nothing to sneeze your nose at. It's a serious thing. Now, each of us may have small land forces, but together we have a great land force. The Delian League is the answer to your security problems. In fact, Athens is willing to permanently station at least one, maybe a squadron of warships in your ports and at least one unit of troops. Just to make sure everyone knows, an attack on one is an attack on all. An attack on Delos is an attack on Athens. Did they go for it? Did they? Well, most of the cities that go to the conference go for it. And they accept that reasoning. And they join the Delian League. Suckers! It's a trap. Within 20 years, actually in most cases within 10 years, Either the government that signed the Delian Treaty is gone, overthrown, or it has become clear that that government is nothing more than a puppet of Athens. The Athenian warship and the Athenian garrison, in all cases, get involved in local politics. If there's a king that rules in this local city, they'll take sides with the crown prince against the king. And they'll promise the crown prince that he'll have more wealth and pleasure than his father ever had. All the crown prince has to do is cooperate with the Athenians and help them to overthrow his father. And a lot of crown princes went for it. The Athenians overthrew governments and made sure that the governments that survived were loyal to them, not their own people. Not their own people. This is key. The Delian League becomes the Athenian Empire. And the Athenians are going to be very unwise imperial rulers. Not like the Persians, and not like the Romans, and not like the British even. The British, the Romans, and the Persians all understood something. If you are going to have an empire, that means you're going to rule over other cultures, other countries, other races of people, with other gods even. If it's just about force, you'll control them so long as you're strong. But the moment you have weakness, they're going to turn on you, and they're going to backstab you, and they're going to join your enemies, and they're going to dance on your grave. You've got to find a way of making them loyal. How can you make loyal a people that you've conquered? Well, what the Romans and the Persians did, and what the British did when they could, is they offered the hand of friendship. Okay, good game. Game's over. We're all on the same side now. Would you like to join us in ruling your people? Would you like to help us understand how to rule your people without offending their gods? Would you like us to understand how to rule your people without having to be harsh? Join us. The Romans offered citizenship. If a person really helped the Roman Empire, wherever they're from, they could be granted, as a reward for their service, citizenship. And that means that they're legally as Roman as any Roman born on the banks of the Tiber, growing up on the Aventine Hill. They are a citizen of Rome. They can't be tortured. Their taxes are different. If they're executed, they're going to be executed quickly by being beheaded. You know, being a Roman citizen is a good deal. Very good deal. The Romans do this to offer the people who were conquered a chance to become part of the government. And it works. By the end of the Roman Empire, most of the people of the empire were deeply loyal. They thought of themselves not as Gauls anymore, or as Celtiberians anymore, or they thought of themselves as Romans. There were Romans that were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned. There were Romans that were red-haired, freckle-faced, green-eyed. There were Romans that were black as the ace of spades. There were Romans who looked like Arabs, Romans who looked like Greeks, Romans who looked like Frenchmen. You got all sorts of Romans. They're all citizens, they all speak Latin, they're all loyal to the empire. That's a big deal. The Persians, if you did what they wanted, they let you be. The British did a variety of things in a variety of areas. That's a good empire. The Athenians were idiots. If you're a citizen of Athens, you get to have democratic rights. But nobody in the colonies was offered anything. The people that the Athenians overthrew were treated like scum in their own country. They were treated like second-class citizens. Why? Because Athens had the force to knock heads if anyone got uppity. What that meant was at the moment that Athens weakened, all of the subject peoples of the Athenian Empire were ready, willing, and able to join with the enemies of Athens because they hated the Athenians. So there's a lesson here. The lesson is if you end up being in charge of other people, try to rule as gently as you can. If they openly defy you, crush them like a grape. But if they are able to be won over, try to win them over. Offer them something of value. Involve them in your success. Make your success their success. The Athenians don't do it, partially because of Pericles. He just didn't see the reason, the need to. So that's what Pericles does overseas. But at home, Pericles wants to change Athens fundamentally. And one of the things he does is he builds the high city and the Parthenon. Now, I don't know with all the light, shine, and reflections, if you can see this picture well. But this is a picture of Acropolis. Acropolis is the high city of Athens. There's a hill that overlooks Athens. Pericles has the top leveled, and a massive temple complex is built called the high city, Acropolis. This is like heaven on earth. What Pericles is trying to do is show an ideal utopian place, a temple complex that's the world the way it should be, not the way it is. A world of beautiful white marble, not gray granite and lesser stones. A world where everything is proportional and symmetrical and beautiful. A world where any Athenian can go and take part in worship, also take pride in this beautiful place, this effective wonder of the world. And you can see the Acropolis from the outside, from anywhere in Athens. This is going to unify us. This beautiful city on a hill, the high city, this Athens in miniature, has at the heart of it the Parthenon. The Parthenon is the great temple of Athena that is built. It is still standing. I'll say again, 2,500 years later, most of the pillars and some of the structure of the Parthenon is still standing now. This thing was built to last. In its heyday, it was incredible. There's a picture in your notes of the interior of a building with a giant statue in it. That's the Parthenon on the inside. With, I think that's the Parthenon with the statue of Athena. I don't know, but I've been told Parthenon is really old. The Parthenon and the high city was designed to unify Athens. Why? Because the people of Athens, Pericles thought, were still too divided. We are all Athenians, but we have city folk and country folk. We have rich and poor, educated and ignorant. We've got all sorts of different people in the city. And for us to be an imperial power, capable of ruling the Athenian Empire and expanding it, we need to be better than we are. So like Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, that are designed to bring out the best virtues in people, the Parthenon, as people look up at it from their lives, their everyday lives in Athens, they look up and hopefully Pericles wants them to be inspired to be their best selves that day. Not to be a selfish, lying, sneaky little jerk, but in fact to be noble, generous, honest, patient, courageous, to be wise rather than clever, to be forthright rather than deceptive. The Parthenon is a picture of heaven on earth, and it's something uniquely Athenian. And the Acropolis also. So those are some of the works of Pericles. But his greatest defensive work is, well, here's the coastline of Athens, and here's where Salamis Island appears. This area is water. Now, Athens, you may recall, is a bit inland. It's all the way up here, the city of Athens. Athens has a port. It's called the Port of Piraeus, and it's down here on the Aegean Sea. Pericles expects sooner or later we're going to fight Sparta. And Sparta has a much more powerful land army than we do. Athens is too far from the sea to get shipments in. So what Pericles is going to do, and he does it, is he's going to have a new set of defensive walls built around Athens, including what are called the Long Walls. The Long Walls are two parallel walls with a road between them, connecting Athens to the port of Piraeus. Back when I was a kid, we used to see World War II movies a lot, because when I was a kid, a lot of the guys who fought World War II were still alive. And if you're fighting the Japanese in the jungle, and the Japanese have a patrol coming towards you that outnumbers you, what are you going to do? You can fight them, or you can avoid them. And one way of avoiding them was to get a bamboo reed, make sure it's hollow, and then lie down in a brook in a grassy spot and breathe through the reed. Don't make any bubbles, don't make any noise, don't make any movement. And hopefully the Japanese patrol will walk right by, not noticing that there are people lying under the water, just thinking that there's, just it's swamp grass with bamboo sticking out. That's pretty common in the jungle. This straw, in effect, the snorkel, is going to save your life. And then maybe if you want to be really nasty, when the Japanese have their backs to you, you signal one another, you get up and you, with burp guns, kill them all. But that is dangerous. So you hide by breathing through the snorkel, by breathing through the straw. Well, the long walls to Piraeus are the straw of Athens. Sparta can camp an army outside of the city of Athens. But these walls are so big and so heavy, they're not going to be able to break through, Pericles hopes. We can get as much food and water as we want through the port of Piraeus. Our fleet dominates the waves, and then we just bring it up the road into Athens. We breathe in and out through the long walls. We send armies out and fleets out, and we bring in supplies. The long walls are going to be Athens' key to survive until we can defeat Sparta overseas. So Pericles is this leader who inspires the Athenians. He has the look in his statue, like Derek Zoolander, the sort of male model look. He looks as more beautiful than any man should look. His skull deformity is hidden. He builds the Delian League and then the Athenian Empire, the Athenian fleet. He builds the Acropolis and the centerpiece, the Parthenon. And he builds the long walls. His legacy is an Athens ready to fight Sparta, as ready can be. Now, the war with Sparta will begin, and we're going to talk about that later. For now, we're just going to assume his expectations came true, Pericles' expectations, and war has come. Well, early in the war, you have a real stalemate. And Pericles wants to boost the morale of the Athenians. So what he does is he calls together the people of Athens to have a ceremony for the dead who died in this war. Abraham Lincoln was imitating Pericles when he made the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our fathers established on these shores basically the last best hope of freedom in this world. Well, that funeral oration changes the American Civil War. Gettysburg Address. It's not a mailbox. Pericles' funeral address tells Athenians what we are. As Athenians, what we stand for. What Pericles is going to try to do is he is going to try to remind the people of Athens of what makes them special, of what's worth fighting for, so that the people of Athens will fight on to victory. But it's as much about the Golden Age as anything else, because this is what Pericles was trying to work for. This is what his great life project was. So, in the winter of 431 BC, Athens honored its war dead with a public funeral. This is the introduction. As a part of this ceremony, Pericles spoke in praise of the dead and the city for which they had died. His speech is the best expression of Athenians' pride in their polis. Now, in your notepad, you will see this speech. It's in a box. It's got some Greek letters on the lower right. And it's sideways. So let's look and find it so that you can read along. Pericles' funeral oration. It's this. Anyone else need a notepad? Yeah, give you a paper cut. Okay.
This is medieval history.
It is. Yeah. Ancient and medieval history. That's us. So open it open. Open it up to the big wide. There you go. Good. I'd just like you to read along because it's a rather important speech. Thus spake Pericles, our Constitution does not copy the laws of neighboring states. Instead, others copy what we do. Our plan of government favors the many instead of the few. That is why it is called a democracy. As for laws, we offer equal justice to everyone. As for social standing, advancement is open to everyone according to ability. High position does not depend on wealth, nor does poverty bar the way. We take pleasure in the arts, but without extravagance, and in knowledge, but without being soft. Our public leaders have their own businesses as well as politics to take care of. Our ordinary citizens see to their own livelihoods, but also are capable of making political decisions, unlike other nations. We Athenians do not call a man who takes no part in public life quiet or unambitious. We call such a man useless. In short, our polis is the school of all Greece. This is the Athens for which these men nobly fought and died, because they could not bear the thought of losing such a city. We have a society where wealth doesn't grant you power and poverty is not a barrier. We judge you on the basis of your ability, not who your father was. Do you know how fair that is? How amazingly fair that is? You have a chance to make your own life. You don't have to depend upon your ancestry, or you don't have to worry about your ancestry blocking your future prospects. Anyone can succeed if they only have ability, if they only will try. This is the fairest system. This is meritocracy. And Pericles is arguing that Athens at its heart is a democracy and a meritocracy where you rise on the basis of your merit. We take pleasure in the arts. We take pleasure in knowledge, but we're not pooftas. We're not frou-frou. We're not Nancy boys. We're not weak sissies. We are, in fact, the manliest of men. We can love the arts. We can love literature. We can love knowledge without being weak. We can do both, and we should. We don't call a man who's not involved quiet. We don't call a man who doesn't take part unambitious. Such a man is useless. We expect everyone to develop their creative talents, everyone to try to make something of themselves, and we expect everyone to take part in helping us govern ourselves wisely, fairly, so that we can be, like that Parthenon, a shining city on the hill. That's what Pericles says. That is what the Golden Age of Athens is about. It is this ideal given form. By our standards today, is it perfect? No. Is there democracy particularly deep and wide within their society? No. Not by modern standards. But we live 2,500 years later. 2,500 years of human suffering stand between us and the Athenians. And during that suffering, we grew and learned and changed, and their failures became our lessons. It is that Golden Age city that next time we will talk about ending up going to war with Sparta. Any questions? Then you may speak quietly to yourselves. You guys are in here for lunch today, so when the bell rings in a few minutes, you can step out for 5 minutes or so, get your food, come back, and be here for lunch. Thank you for your attention, and at home.